Good to go? Yeah, so just Steve. I'll call the Thursday, July 31st, 2025 meeting of the Cumberland Planning Board to order. Roll call. Mr. Zook. Here. Mr. McDonald. Here. Mr. Butler.
Here.
Mr. Scown.
Here.
Let's see. Mr. O'Neill.
Here.
Ms. Reese is absent. Mr. D'Ambrosio is not here yet. Mr. Costa.
Here.
And the chair is present. Approval of the planning board minutes of June 26, 2025. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? And if there are none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Costa. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 6 has been removed from the agenda this evening, just as a note. And Mr. Mordecai, you have a presentation to make?
I just want to take a quick moment. Welcome Josh O'Neill to the planning board. Many of you remember him not so long ago when he was the town planner here. After he left town, he went on to become the supervising planner at the Division of Statewide Planning in the Community Outreach and Plan Implementation section. And part of what Josh does is review comprehensive plans, right? Which is great, because ours is going to be coming due in the next couple of years. So very happy to have you here, and welcome to the board.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Typically, we have a swearing in. Can we do that this evening?
Give me 1 sec
Sure.
to find that.
And Chairman, while he looks that up, just can you note I had to abstain from the meeting minutes since this is my first meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. O'Neill, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, just repeat after me. I, state your name,
I, Josh O'Neill,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
and obey the laws of the United States of America
and obey the laws of the United States of America
and the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations,
and the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations,
that I will in all respects observe the provisions of the Charter
that I will in all respects observe the visions of the Charter
and ordinances of the town of Cumberland,
and ordinances of the town of Cumberland,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Planning Board Member.
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of a planning board member.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard. Okay. Item number 3, public meeting, project type, pre-application minor land development, conservation development, project name Oak Tree Circle, owner Almeida Irrevocable Trust, applicant High Tech Construction, location 147 Pound Road, Assessors Plat 41, Lot 49, Zone A2 with no sewer or water. The applicant proposes to subdivide the property into 3 lots, one lot with an existing single-family house, one lot with 5 3-bedroom detached condos, and the third to be dedicated as open space. This item was continued from the June 26, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Ms. McVery.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the project is located at 147 Pound Road. It's a 14.28 acre A2 zoned lot with no public water or sewer. The site has a pre-existing home on it that was built in 2020. The proposal is for the approval of a conservation development to add 5 new single-family homes that'll be clustered at the center of the property while preserving most of the land as open space. So the parcel breakdown, which I just like to note, these numbers have slightly changed from what is stated on your staff report. So the developable land is 13.52 acres. The 3 parcels will be split up. Parcel A is 1.84 acres with the existing home, and it'll meet all zoning requirements. Parcel B is just over 4 acres. That'll have the 5 3-bedroom detached condos on it. And then parcel C, which will be dedicated as open space to the town, has a total of 8.41 acres. Of that, 7.66 acres is buildable. So just a few quick things about conservation developments. The homes are clustered to conserve land. In this case, 61.5% will be preserved. That exceeds the 60% minimum requirement of land that has to be preserved for the zone. There's a required yield plan that is done. The applicant shows 6 homes would be allowed by zoning under a conventional development. That's what they're proposing. And zoning permits multiple homes on 1 lot under conservation developments. Additionally, the planning board is encouraged to adjust lot dimensions to support this denser layout. So there are a few requested waivers. First, from multi-household dwelling use. Having multiple houses on 1 lot in an A2 zone is not normally allowed. For frontage, the applicant is proposing less than the required 125 feet. And then with regards to the waiver request from lot coverage, the new plan proposes 15.28%. So therefore, the applicant would no longer need a waiver from lot coverage. So in conclusion, the planning department feels this plan provides new housing while preserving open space. It complies with zoning via the yield plan and aligns with the town's conservation development goals.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. McVery? Hearing none, we'll hear from the applicant. Mr. Partington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As usual, the planning department's recitation of the plan at this stage is pretty complete. The area, as stated, we're looking for a conservation development here. We have required 60% in the A2. The proposal is for 5 additional homes to subdivide the existing house into a 2-acre lot. I think a little over 2 acres, if I'm not mistaken, to meet the minimum requirements, and the remainder to be, again, as a conservation development. A lot of upland, a lot of slope, a lot of rock, so it's going to be going forward. There'll be design issues and there'll be construction, I'm sure, but now at pre-app and what we see, we think it's doable in light of the dimensional observations that we have. So also I have Mr. Esposito here, who has been the engineer on the project. If you have any questions about, even at pre-app, about proposed drainage, I know that's on the plan as well. There's going to be obviously private water and septic in light of the location off Pound Road.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Partington?
Chairman, just one question.
Yes.
I just noted in the discussion that was included in the technical review committee notes, the presence of a stone wall on the property.
Yeah, that's right, John. Yeah, Mr. O'Neill, I'm sorry. Mr. O'Neill, yes, that was brought up, and at the time, and I don't believe there's been any decision on that. I don't know if, if the owner at this point, or the applicant has any thoughts on the stone wall. But I don't know if, Joe, any idea what you're gonna do with the stone wall? Any idea what you're gonna do with the stone wall?
Yes, please.
Sorry, Andy. Let Mr. Esposito come forward.
And please give us your name, address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Anthony A. Esposito. I'm a registered professional engineer in Rhode Island. My address, my official address is 12666C Kenwood Lane, Fort Myers, Florida. So, long ride. Just kidding. The stone wall base was provided to me by the land surveyor, and for all accounts, it doesn't seem to represent a property line. We took a look at, we went on a site visit, and I believe the town planner was with us, along with Abigail, and some parts of the stone wall actually look like exposed ledge. So according to the surveyor, he believes that a past development option, that stone wall was maybe used as a boundary line, but right now, until I'm corrected by the land surveyor, the only thing I can say is it's just a stone wall in the middle of nowhere and not a lot. And I don't know if we can preserve it. You can see by the screen that it goes into our private cul-de-sac a little bit, and it goes in front of some of the buildings. So we can try to preserve some of it, but some portions of the stone wall will have to be removed during construction.
And Mr. Chair, can I add that Ms. McVery and I were out there? We went out there specifically to look at the stone wall. And, you know, we're not experts on stone walls, but it's very low. Some of it serves as a retaining wall. It's not that kind of wall that you see, you know, that's like as high as this table, which is several courses high. So our impression was that it was not very impressive.
Well, I'll ask this, does it have any historic significance?
Well, if it's not a boundary line, you know, I don't know. I don't know what its purpose was, why was it erected? Was it, you know, a pen for livestock or something?
It seems a little strange, although it does, it almost follows a contour. Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, that was my concern, just noting the importance of any historic stone walls and recollection of my time working with the town's Historic District Commission. I know that's very important to them, the preservation of any historic stone walls as part of future development. So it doesn't sound like from staff that that's the case.
No, okay, that's good. Any other questions? Is the engineer here? You are the engineer. Okay. Can you just walk us through a little bit as far as the drainage is concerned?
We are there, when we graded the road, and we took the engineer's advice about going from 10% to 8%, we created a low point, roughly at, if you look at the screen, there is a red label, just as it's about to turn to the right. There is a low spot in the road proposed in that location. That shape you see is about the shape of a finger. We are, at the present time, we are proposing a detention basin there. We have a lot of ledge on the site, so we're not anticipating much exfiltration. So we're probably going to provide an outlet structure and mitigate the amount of water heading towards those wetlands.
Other questions?
Did you say there's going to be a detention pond or of sorts?
given the geology of the site, my first choice is always to induce drainage to go underground. But with the ledge outcrop in the soils, you're probably going to get very minimal infiltration. So the best thing to do is to hold the water back and just let it release slowly. And, you know, whatever infiltration we get is a bonus. Right now, I'm conservatively saying that the pond bottom will not infiltrate for my calculations. Now so whatever infiltration I get when the pond is built, I mean, we're not gonna build it on a cement pad or anything like that.
Yeah, of course.
Whatever infiltration I get, I'll consider it a bonus.
And whose responsibility will it be to maintain that?
If it's private, usually it's a homeowners association. They'll probably hire somebody to go around and clean the trash from the swales. And just basically keep an eye on it, make sure it's functioning.
I'm laughing because I have one in my backyard that I inherited, and that's how I ended up on this board. Because I went to the town council and said, hey, I don't know anything about holding ponds. They said, well, it's yours.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility.
They can, over the years, if they're neglected,
Absolutely.
weeds will take over,
And everything.
some trees will even get in there, and
Oh, yeah.
those you gotta get out of there, so,
Trash.
yeah. Trash,
Cigarettes,
and you gotta
everything.
clean. Cigarettes aren't much of a problem.
But that needs to be, the homeowner needs to know in advance if in fact that they're going to have to maintain that pond.
I'm sure DEM will
Well,
require
not necessarily,
us-
it wasn't even in my deed.
Okay.
Yes, wasn't in the deed.
Mr. Costa, I'm familiar with your aversion to the detention ponds. In this instance, so far, what's proposed, and I haven't had any discussions with the applicant at this point about his choice of condo. Either way, at this point, it's listed as a condominium proposal. So at best, it would be something that would be a declaration. A declaration would be the responsibility of the condominium owners. And at worst, it's still better for the town, would be a homeowners association requirement, that that be cleaned and maintained.
Just curious.
No, I agree.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see, so the other thing I noticed, you have like a community septic system, am I right?
It is proposed that the 5 new units will be connected to one leach field, and each individual unit will have its own septic tank.
Okay. And you're still in the process of getting the state approval on that? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you.
As is always the case, or at least hopefully with pre-app, get some feedback and thoughts from the planning board, which you've already received from technical review. Anything we can do to make the project more palatable. So, any other questions? Mr. Esposito is here. I have the applicant here as well. Thanks.
Okay. Well, certainly, Mr. Costa, your question about the drainage structure.
Yeah.
And who is responsible for it. And Mr. Parrington has noted that it would be like a homeowners association. I mean, I think that's the best route to go, that the homeowners within this condominium development will share the costs of the maintenance and so on and so forth. And it will be their responsibility to maintain it. I did have one question, because obviously, when you look at a plan, it's not the same thing as it occurs in, real life, because you're looking at lines and stuff, and these lines are here, but they're not out there on the parcel. but I was questioning if you knew the distance from the, let's see, what that would be oops, where's the north arrow? I get, yes, okay. It would be the westerly property line where it makes that little point. Do you know what the distance is between, because it's, I understand that as far as the conservation parcel, you want it contiguous, you don't want to have it broken up. Plus, if you did that, you'd end up having a,
It's the south part, the southern edge of the parcel, where it really necks down a lot. No, you gotta go like south, down, where, right there, yeah.
right there.
Right. So do you know how far that is? Well, there's a setback line there, right?
Okay. It looks funky on the plan, but that's the way it is, but out there in the real world, so to speak, you don't see any lines. So there is an adequate room that, if need be, an emergency vehicle or whatever could get through there. You know, if there would be, like, you know, a fire or something like that in the open space, or, yeah, yeah. No, that was my concern, that it would be so tight that you wouldn't be able to get an emergency vehicle through there. That seems reasonable. Okay? Yes, Mr. Zook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question. I'm noticing that the existing dwelling at number 155 Pound Road will be somewhat close to the development, and I wondered if there had been any discussion with that resident about how much vegetation would still be existing between that lot and the development.
No, there's not been any discussion about that.
And forgive me, I haven't been to this site myself, but are there a lot of trees there that would provide some privacy, some coverage between that neighbor and this project?
I don't believe that on the property line. I mean, I don't know what construction's going to do, but as far as the areas goes, as you know, Pound Road is pretty much all trees. I don't believe that there are, I mean, from perspective, your perspective is just, I guess, out of courtesy more than anything else. Setbacks have been observed. To the extent that there's any suggestion of any type of buffering that goes along, I've seen the board before make suggestions in that respect in concert with an approval. Suggestions about buffering. I'm sure that we're always open to discussion if that becomes an issue, particularly at the point when we go to public hearing and neighbors may show up and may ask that question, so. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Cosper.
Pond Road is not a very wide road. I'd be curious insofar as the width of the road near this development, approaching the development, because how far is it past the Zen Center? How far is this site from the Zen Center?
It's before the Zen Center.
It's before-
If you're going west, the Zen Center's after it.
Zen Center's after it?
Yeah.
I travel the road quite often because I live not too far from there. That road isn't wide at all. No, you could never get a fire truck and a car on that road at the same time and pass each other.
mistaken, and if I'm not mistaken, this was the TRC, because I believe the second matter was on the same day. I believe it was. I don't believe that anybody from fire was here that day, Mr. Costa. So obviously, going forward, there's going to have to be something that, especially with a cul-de-sac and,
Yeah, maybe the highway, somebody in the highway could
Yeah.
do some measurements.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to have to be discussed, obviously, at some point.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, as a matter of fact, too, I think there was also, if I'm not mistaken, Captain Iozzi brought up something about site distance and wanted to make,
Yeah.
site distance was something he wanted us to look at. So all these things, again, go into the mix. And, but I just wanted to let you know that, because when I heard about, emergency vehicles and whatnot, I'm almost positive that was the same day, because we also talked about the next project and the intra-site circulation, and I know that Chief Anderson wasn't present that day.
So that's the one thing that came to mind with Palm Road being so narrow.
Oh, yeah.
That the site distance is kind of almost critical, because, coming out there, there's very little room.
It is one of those locations, right?
Yeah, and if there's all kinds of, vegetation and so on that we block in view. And then, of course, you got the horizontal situation, but I don't think there's any hill, no real hill in that area.
No, I don't believe so.
If you come out of Southbury, take a right onto Palm Road, going towards the Zen Center.
Yeah.
Your site is horrible, and it drops down,
Okay.
drops down. And as a matter of fact, they flail that twice a year, Palm Road.
Is that right? That I did not know.
Yeah, they
After all
just
these
did
years,
just did it last week.
Okay.
Because it just grows in, and the road looks really small.
Well, I know that the captain, who's very meticulous, Captain Iozzi, he mentioned it. He didn't, he was familiar with the area.
Yeah.
And he didn't make any comments either way. He just said, make sure that we have adequate site distance, because it is, again, an area of concern in that respect.
I'd be curious to see that report, if it's something that's done, because it's a horrible road to travel. Really is.
Aesthetically pleasing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, aesthetically, it is. Especially with a convertible.
Are there any other questions or comments at this point?
Just if I could note, I did look at this on, Google Aerial and Street View and such, and I think there's got to be at least 75 to 100 feet of vegetation between the existing dwelling and 155 Pound Road, which was, I think, a question earlier. So it's, it's a good amount of vegetation existing.
If there are no other questions or comments, as a courtesy, this is a pre-application meeting, but if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions or concerns and would like to voice them, please come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record. And if there's anyone in the queue.
No, we don't have anyone, in the queue, Mr. Chair.
Okay, fine. So I think the major concern right now is more about the vegetation in the site distance at the entrance to the proposed project. Other than that, we went through the drainage and so on, and we'll get a better look at that at the next submission. So does the applicant have any questions for the board? Yes. Yes. We just want to make you get up and walk, back and forth.
Who gets to review the drainage first, the state or the city of Cumberland? Town of Cumberland?
Usually, it's kind of done at the same time.
Okay, all right.
Am I right, Mr. Modica?
So the statutes have recently changed, and normally we would require their on-site wastewater treatment permit from DEM at preliminary plan, but that's no longer required. It's required at final plan. So it would be a condition of preliminary approval, provided they get the permit and provided Public Works also signs off.
Yeah, we're at a situation where some of the legislation that's down at the State House has been going back and forth as far as they came with enacting a new set of laws, and then they backtracked a little bit and they've refined a little bit. So we're kind of, wondering what's going on also. And thanks to Mr. Modica, he kind of keeps us in check as far as what's going on down there at the State House.
I understand.
Okay. Not that it's important or anything, is any idea when you're going to be back for preliminary?
I certainly don't want to speak for Mr. Esposito. I think lots of dependent on taking the concerns, considerations, the comments from planning, TRC, and the planning board moving forward. And obviously, the applicant who's also here will be in on those discussions. But my understanding is that this is a project that he wants to be expedited, so I would assume it's not going to be a long time.
Okay. We're not going to hold you to it anyway.
You deserve an answer to the question.
Yeah. So we can pencil you in and so on. Okay. Let's see. The next item on the agenda is a public meeting for a pre-application major land development comprehensive permit. Owner applicant Almeida Investments LLC, location 475 Mendon Road, assessors plat 14, lot 14, zone C1 with water and sewer. The applicant proposes to subdivide a lot with one lot containing an existing apartment building and the other lot to include 12 residential units with 3 units, 25% designated as affordable. This item was continued from the June 26, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, I think I need to recuse as an abutter for that.
You're within 200 feet, are you? Okay.
Yeah, all right?
Yes, then you would. Do you want us to check? Are you sure, or do you want us to check real quick? Okay, okay. So your packets for the June meeting where we didn't hear this project included a site plan that showed 2 buildings and 12 units. Those plans have since been updated and included with your new packets. It's now 1 building with 9 units, 3 of which are proposed to be affordable. This proposal is a little different than what we're used to in that the applicant's proposing to subdivide a lot with an existing apartment building that has 11 units and then build a new apartment building on the subsequently vacant lot. But here we have to look at the totality of the entire project. So when we look at that, there are a total of 20 units involved in this project. We have the 11 existing, we have the 9 proposed. So for this to qualify as a comprehensive permit, at least 25% of all these units have to be affordable. So instead of providing 3 out of 9, it has to be 5 out of 9. Part of the conditions, if you will, for comprehensive permits is that units have to be spread out through the development. That might be a little difficult in this case because there's a building already occupied with tenants. So the more likely scenario is that the 5 affordable units will be in the new building. Overall, the project requires several adjustments in terms of residential density, lot coverage, parking space setback. I think it's a much improved plan from what was originally presented, or not presented, but originally submitted last month. So of these adjustments that will be coming forth, potentially a preliminary plan or master plan, I think are reasonable for an affordable project. I think we might need to take a closer look at the parking for the existing building. There's 11 units there. They only have 16 parking spaces. Is that sufficient? But we don't know. And we're going to talk about later on in the agenda, we're going to talk about parking and, what requirements should be. But otherwise, I think the concept on paper looks good, provided that the affordable housing component is at least 25% for 5 units.
Board, have any questions for Mr. Modica? Mr.
Question.
Zook?
You made a note about the parking at the existing building, questioning whether that's adequate. Has that been studied, or is there a known history of parking problems there, or?
Nothing like that. I mean,
okay,
I
just
think
wondering.
it's more, let's make sure they've got enough parking, and let's figure out, kind of related to our zoning ordinance requiring 2 spaces per unit, is this always needed? I mean, they've got 9 2-bedrooms, 2 2-bedrooms. I mean, let's do a little study use this as a case study. How much parking are they using? So we understand it better.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do we have an idea of what the lot coverage might look like on this? It's hard to tell. There's no number, right? You believe it's over 40%?
It looks close to half at least, right?
I would say it looks to be well more than half.
Yeah. I don't know if, when you guys, if you want to address that when you get up.
Any other questions? We'll hear from the applicant. Mr. Partington?
Again, planning department delivered a pretty complete recitation here. Again, the plan has changed considerably. I'm aware, and you've been obviously hearing a lot of these cases lately about density bonuses in conjunction with the comprehensive permits, and people are coming to the board trying to get what they can. It's investment property, and they're looking for the bonuses, along with making sure that their investments are, that it works for them investment-wise. In this case, you have a situation where there was 2 buildings initially proposed. Fortunately, we came down to the one with 3 stories, 9 units. I'm fully aware that because of the fact, and by the way, this was, and Mr. Monica can correct me, and certainly we made our own decisions, but it was suggested at a March of 24 meeting to avoid any integration problems, which are required by the comp permit statute. The units have to be all integrated to what exists. It might be make more sense and be easier for the builder or the applicant, excuse me, to subdivide the properties. So as Mr. Modica said, I mean, you have, it's C1, so you've got your 5,000 square feet, so it's not a question of the lot size, it's obviously the density, okay? Also, you've got the situation of first floor, commercial, residential, excuse me, on the first floor. It's going to be addressed also as part of the relief. Because in cutting the lot, we now would be increasing the nonconformity with respect to density of the existing building. So therefore, I understand that it has to be considered as part of the comp permit application, therefore requiring a 25%. I would say in support of it, although there are a lot of figures, and I got a 14 in Algebra 2 in high school, so I had to muddle through that. It took me a long time, but I essentially agree with the percentages. But if you look at, like for instance, the 2036 land use map, future land use map, high density residential, the density percentage is not the same as pointed out in the staff report, but you've got across the street, you've got Berkeley Commons across the street. Another multifamily right next to that. So also the building as it is, it fits. So there is, and I'm going to have Mr. Morrow from Insight Engineer come up. I believe that we have addressed the lot coverage issue, which in Cumberland also includes any impervious surface. Believe we've addressed the lot coverage issue. If that's the case, and if we can we can make sure the parking comports. Then dimensionally, I know we've got an uphill climb with respect to the density, but otherwise, it fits. So the only thing we didn't discuss at TRC, a lot of good comments. One of the things that wasn't discussed was, again, was emergency vehicle turnaround and on the site, which again, I'm sure we can address with Chief Anderson, who's, so I'd like Mr. Mara to come up, if he can, and address the comments that were made earlier by, hopefully, by the planning department. I believe the only outstanding issue at this point is the 10 feet, Glenn, from, on the parking.
The parking
Distance,
setback.
the setback, yeah. Also, if I'm not mistaken, is it on the comp permit, is it one per unit under the new statute?
One parking space.
Right, okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Joshua Morrow, Insight Engineers. Morrow, 501 Great Road, North Smithfield. It is to my understanding, we had a TRC for this project based on that feedback. As far as engineering goes, I mean, it's still pretty preliminary at this point. We were able to achieve the 40% lot coverage the way it stands today. Again, as Scott mentioned, we have not had the chance to review with the fire department, so contingent upon that, we still have some room to work with. More to the point of the parking, we proposed 9 units at this stage. We're proposing 18 parking spaces to meet to my understanding, the 2 parking spaces per unit. Further, in discussion today, I do see potential to alleviate the variance or request for the 10-foot parking setback to the property line. So I see room for that and potential to alleviate that as well. With that said, there's areas for drainage. The site has potential, and I'll defer to Scott for the rest of density and units.
Board have questions, Mr. Morrow? You just hit upon drainage a little bit. What do you anticipate the drainage looking like?
For drainage at this point, again, it's preliminary. We're anticipating at this point something similar to a surface basin that can handle the runoff right from the parking area directly. And hopefully we'll be able to infiltrate some of that underground as well. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Butler?
I didn't have specific questions, but just a couple of comments. One is in regard to the parking. I think if it's possible to lower the number of spaces, I think that would be helpful. One of my concerns is around the landscaping. This is kind of the last green area between One Mendon Road and Berkeley Commons. All the wooded area in that stretch of roadway has been taken down. So I don't know if there's a possibility of, especially that part of the parking lot that faces Mendon Road, if there would be a way, maybe not to do something as extensive as what Berkeley Commons has done, but some trees, bushes, plants that kind of provide a little green space as you're coming
As a
down.
matter of fact, Mr. Butler, that was when I believe Mr. Monica made that comment about wanting to see more green for those same reasons. So that's something that I discussed with Insight as well, and we'll discuss it with Mr. Almeida. There's also a stone wall in the back.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, what the issue is with the stone wall.
Well, I know that Mr. Stevens was adamant about preserving that when we first went out to the site. But again, I don't at this point see any reason why anything, as far as I know, based on, it's like when you drive by a place a million times, and then when you really get a... Something I said.
Jesus Christ.
But again, although we do not have, like other rural towns, an ordinance that preserves the stone walls, it is a concern You understand that perfectly. And any effort to maintain that will be useful.
The other thing that pops into my mind, I know I've mentioned this with other applications, and I know just the way this site is laid out, there probably aren't a lot of options. For some reason, besides fire trucks and ambulances needing to get close to the building and turn around, for some reason, I always think about the Amazon trucks, the UPS trucks, the mail truck. All those people would have to pull in and then try to back out of the parking lot, because and I understand on one hand I'm saying take away some parking spaces, and on the other hand I'm saying put in a turnaround. But again, if there's some way, as you're kind of looking at it, if there's a way to provide some area that would be more easier for those kinds of vehicles to get in and out, that might be an advantage as well. I'm glad it went from 2 buildings to 1. I think that will look much better. I think it's much more palatable for that site.
No, and again, once again, as with the previous matter, pre-application, that's what, it's forced to get comments and see if there's any way we can make this more palatable.
Any other questions or comments? At this point, I think, Mr. Modica, we talked about number of affordable units. Have we nailed that down?
Well, there's a requirement for 25%. I'm sorry, the question was directed to me. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
The requirement's 25%, so it's going to have to be at least 5, if this proposal stands at 20 total.
Okay. Does the board have any input as far as that's concerned?
The more the better, but 25% is good,
Yeah, I mean, and again, as a planning board, from your perspective, we understand that perfectly, and I know that you understand as well that in the reverse, that there's got to be, and again, and I've said to many people that this is not junk, the affordables are not junk, and that stigma that seems to attach just isn't always appropriate. Well, it's never appropriate, really. And so, and I have ventured to say that the amount of people I see applying for comprehensive permits, there must be something in it for the developer, so.
But on the other side, I completely understand it costs
Yeah.
just as much to build an affordable unit as it is to build a market
Exactly.
rate unit, so you're
Exactly.
taking a loss somewhere, so it's.
Exactly, Mr. Butler. Yeah.
We're only talking, what, 6 and 3? And, 6 units is not a big amount of units compared to.
I think the issue is, and it's difficult, and again, I understand exactly what the statute says, but for someone like the owner of this parcel that has had an 11-unit building on it for, since mid-70s, I believe, that, to suggest now that the percentage has to be based on the entire parcel is difficult to accept that. I mean, but by the same token, the only way that you could address the density, I mean, as soon as you, even if you didn't subdivide, it still becomes part, well, even more so when you don't subdivide, but even the subdivision, it encompasses the relief that's going to be needed for the building that's standing. So it has to be part of it, and as much as I don't like that formula, I think that's the correct way to look at it.
Well, you could thank the state for,
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess well, never mind.
yeah. Yeah. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself, that's for sure.
No.
No, I understand.
So, Mr. Morgan, any questions you have?
I think we're good, really.
Chairman, if I just make
Mr. O'Neill.
one comment, just to reiterate the point, I do also agree that, the vegetation screening is going to be very important here, just because, you're looking out across Old Mendon Road to the, I still think of it as the new highway department, because I was here when the town moved over there. At this stage, we don't really know what that's going to look like, but just knowing that you're going to have trucks going in and out of the highway department all day, it's going to have an impact on, vegetation growing there, especially when it's first planted. So just keep that in mind for, very hardy vegetation
believe it or not, I some of them about that we had a house I haven't yet seen any trucks coming in out there now. It's, I've had it 1 year, 2 years, it's not like it continues.
Yeah, it usually leave early in the morning.
Yeah, it's back there. Anything else, board wants to add as far as, where we are at this point? I think we're pretty good at the, nothing sticks out at this point, so. Mr. Ponting, have anything else to add? No. Go ahead. Yeah, I want to make, I mean, since you had your back done.
No,
want
no,
you-
I appreciate it. Get my exercise.
Yeah.
No, again, thank you for the comments, and I will sit down with Mr. Almeida and review those along with Insight, and hopefully we can move the matter forward.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
all right, thank you. Okay. The next item is number 5, public hearing for preliminary plan, major land development, comprehensive permit, project name Haley's Commons, owner applicant Haley's LLC, location 75 Manuel Hill Road, assessors plat 54, lot 7 and 8. Zoning is R1 with public water and public sewer. The applicant requests approval to construct 2 3-unit buildings, 1 2-unit building, and convert an existing building into 2 units. 3 of the 10 units for sale will be affordable. The project requires adjustments for multi-household dwelling in an R1 zone, residential density, building setbacks, lot coverage, building height, and parking space setback. This item was continued from the June 26, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Mr. Modica. Mr. Resnick, I jump in there.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Resnick.
Okay, Mr. Resnick.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Resnick on behalf of the applicant and owner. I want to give you a brief status of some items that we worked on since that last hearing where we presented to you in full. If you'll recall, we were kind of workshopping with the opposition, the neighbor and her attorney about what may satisfy them. And I'm happy to report that, and also the board had requested that we do revised plans based off of some of the accommodations that we had made, removing the decks, the fencing, etc. So we did clean up the plan set. We made all of those revisions before submitting it to Mr. Monica and by through him, the board. We sent it to Ms. Ricker, she reviewed it, and I provided an email communication to planning staff that the neighbor did withdraw the opposition to the project based off of what we did. And you do have a revised plan set. One thing I did want to say, and it's my fault, Mr. Pimentel is not available to be here this evening. And I had hoped that he would. He told me several weeks ago he would not, and I dropped the ball. And candidly, had I known that he was unavailable this evening, I likely would have sought a continuance to an additional date so that we could have the benefit of him, because I know that one of the issues that the board has been wrestling with is the modifications that we're seeking, and I think that Mr. Pimentel's testimony was pivotal to that, and I did want to give him the opportunity to answer any questions based off of the revised plans, which I will note, as you'll recall, we eliminated the height waiver. So in many ways, Mr. Chairman, I would defer to you. I'm somewhat inclined to request a continuance so Mr. Pimentel could be here, but I did also want to give the board a status on what we did and that there was no longer any opposition since we are here this evening.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Costa?
is there any reason why we can't continue it?
No, because we already had an agreement, right?
And again, if there's any concern about deadlines for decisions, we would happy to do the same that we did last time. I just, I feel a little bit uncomfortable without kind of my prime expert on those issues here, so.
Mr. Monica? What are your thoughts?
It sounds like the applicant would, out of an abundance of caution, wait for his expert to be here, not knowing what your questions are going to be and how, because there was a lot of discussion at the last meeting about the number of adjustments, and there seemed to be a lot of concern about that. So perhaps, if you still have questions about these adjustments, it might be a good idea to have Mr. Pimentel here to address your concerns and explain the nature of the adjustments relative to, how that fits in with providing affordable housing and how, towns are supposed to provide subsidies, adjustments, variances, waivers, all the same thing by different names, to provide affordable housing. So I think if you still have questions and concerns, I think it would be best to wait for, the expert here to answer your questions.
Mr. Butler, I'm getting the eye here.
Thank you for breaking out the pre-existing and proposed adjustments. That was helpful to be able to see what's just an adjustment because of the nature of the property. The only adjustment that I had a question about was the parking space that's 6 feet from Fountain Street as opposed to the 10 feet. And just, is that a safety concern? I imagine that you want a parking space to be 10 feet from the road for safety reasons. Is 6 feet getting us into an area where it would be a concern, or?
To the best of my knowledge, no. Maybe Glenn can comment on the purpose of that, the setback itself, but to my knowledge, there's no safety, there's no 6-foot hangover of a vehicle that I'm aware of or expected at this property. Joshua Morrow, yep.
But beyond that, I didn't have any concerns about any of the other adjustments. So I personally wouldn't need to see Mr. Pimentel again. But.
Anyone else on the board?
No, I'm just happy that the opposition was withdrawn from the neighbor. And I think you've done a good job of, accommodating the request. So appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And I'd give credit to the developer who did it very quickly.
Again, I'll echo Mr. Scown. I'm very pleased that we could, get that worked out amicably between the butters, because you always want to make your neighbors happy.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Costa?
Do we need a motion to continue this?
Mr. Chair, before you make a motion to continue, there's two things. Number one, I would just ensure, when was the application submitted?
I know you gave us another 30 days at the last meeting, so I know we're covered for the August meeting.
If out of an abundance of caution, you want to do another 30 days with that, I'm fine. But the point is, I just want my whole team here, so we're not going to put you under a...
So I would recommend you make the extra 30 days a condition of continuance. And then additionally, since Mr. O'Neill has not been present for the prior meetings on this, he should abstain from voting on it as well.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion that we continue the matter to the regularly scheduled meeting in August with the condition that the timeline will be moved up for an additional 30 days for approval.
Thank you very much, Mr.
I
Chairman.
have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Second by Mr. Costa. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Resnick. Okay, where are we? The next. Ooh. Presentation, zoning resiliency. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick background on this project, the Rhode Island Division of Statewide Planning. Oh, Mr. O'Neill will be recusing himself. He works for the agency that is providing the money for this project. The Rhode Island Division of Statewide Planning, they've been very generous. They selected Cumberland for a pilot project to update our ordinance and regulations to increase resilience against the effects of climate change. So there are sections here that have been revised, related to stormwater, drainage, site design, and landscaping, and reducing impervious cover. And Nate Kelly from Horsley Witten is here, and he and his team have been hard at work for a few months now, combing through our code and our planning documents so that we can increase climate resilience for new development. So while there will be no vote tonight on this, after we receive your input, Nate and his team are going to make any changes, and we're going to bring this back with the revisions. So at a later date, the board will be voting on the revised zoning ordinance, which will include a recommendation to the town council, and you're going to be voting on your regulations for adoption. And there's also changes that were made to the code of ordinances, which don't directly pertain to the planning board, but we wanted to include that as well in your packet so you got the big picture of what the changes are overall. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nate.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, the board. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to do a brief presentation. Again, my name is Nate Kelly. I'm the principal planner and president of Horsley Witten Group, a New England-based planning, engineering, and science firm. And we've been working on this project for several months now, again, to look at your codes and think about issues related to resiliency. And what we're talking about there is, we'll go through some of these things, flooding, heat impacts, a lot of the things that we've heard a lot of stories about here in Cumberland. Just for the record, as was already stated, I do like to put these in these presentations. We are not at a public hearing, so we are not voting tonight. In case anybody picks this presentation up later on and takes a look at this, we want to get that out right in front. I'll list out the full scope of the items. You received a pretty beefy packet, so we understand it's a lot of material. Some of this is of greater relevance to you in terms of, the land development regulations, for example, versus the code of ordinances. So you're going to be working with some of this material and not working with other parts, and we'll talk about the full scope of what we did there. As Mr. Monica said, at some point we'll be back, for adoption proceedings. So tonight, we would just love to hear initial concerns, questions, kind of get your feet wet, get oriented to this material a little bit, and then we can talk about, what you think you need to move forward. Which do you want to have another discussion, more technical on a particular item? Whatever it takes to sort of bring you to a level of comfort on this, we can accommodate that. So again, the basic issues here, to keep it simple, is heat. Guess what? It's been really hot out, as we've all seen over the last several weeks. It was hot last year, hot the year before that, and it's going to get hotter. And so from a regulatory perspective, when we think about heat, we think about landscaping, and we think about impervious cover. These are ways to sort of mitigate those impacts. We've probably all seen some of the studies where they take the temperature in a shaded street at the same time out in a parking lot, and you're looking at 20 degrees difference, in the ambient air temperature. So landscaping really does make a difference. Flooding is something you all have experienced many times here at many different levels in Cumberland. Landscaping, again, plays a role here. This is how you change impervious surface into something that absorbs or helps to mitigate the amount and the rate of flow every time that it rains, which brings us to stormwater runoff. So you folks look at drainage all the time. You talked about drainage tonight with these applications. that's really high on your list, and a lot of the details and the technical aspects of that come through this board. There are flood zones in the community, and you have a flood zone ordinance, which is not something that you necessarily work with a lot, but you need to be aware of it because there's some cross-referencing in terms of you're reviewing an application that is in a flood zone. You need to be aware of what's in that ordinance because those requirements are going to apply. We looked at different ways to potentially reduce impervious cover. We looked, for example, we'll talk about parking tonight. That came up earlier. How much parking do you need? And how can you maybe accommodate opportunities to reduce that where it's appropriate? And then another piece that you do look at, even though it is in another ordinance, but it comes through land development as well, is this idea of erosion and sediment control. So we'll talk a little bit about the changes that you see in two separate places in your packet. So just a quick overview of our process. We spent a lot of time interviewing staff, DPW, planning, other folks, to get a sense of what have you been seeing, what are the problems that repeatedly come up in permitting, what are the problems that you hear about, complaints in the neighborhood, where is it flooding, how is it flooding, those types of things. So just a lot of sort of on the ground conversations about how this is playing out. We did a technical audit of the codes, like where is this being regulated? So in some other material we developed that can be shared, you'll see sort of a matrix of all these items, like landscaping, where is it in your full code of ordinance? Parking, where is that in your full code of ordinance? Stormwater, where is that? And as you are aware, it's not just in one place, right? So you see these things pop up in different places. So we've been trying to track that and keep an inventory of where all that stuff is. So at the end, we don't want to contradict, your regulations within themselves. We had a public meeting, so we introduced a lot of these ideas at a public meeting, I think on March 18th it was, and we started our first drafts, which are before you tonight. So a fair amount of work has gone into these drafts. We've had staff review. They've been great, sort of keeping us honest. What about this? What about that? Did you check this? And so we kind of go back and forth. I think DPW's looked at this stuff. Other folks have looked at this stuff. Glenn's been passing it around. So we're getting that good technical input as we go through. And this is like a good first swing, I think, is what you have in front of you tonight. And here we are at the planning board meeting. What you won't see, and maybe this question might have come up in your mind, is that there's going to be more housekeeping to be done. So this idea of cross-referencing that I talked about, we didn't put all of that in your packet for tonight. We kind of gave you the meat of the matter to look at. And with the exception, I think, of the flood ordinance, we didn't do definitions. So you may have, that's something we do at the end. When we think we've got the language all sort of tidied up, then we add the new definitions or we correct the definitions that need correction. That's sort of a final step. So that's not in your packet tonight. That would come in the next round. And then we'd head into adoption proceedings. So in the general code, as I mentioned, there were three places where you do see things in your packet. So the illicit discharge detection and elimination, this is a mandatory program that's sort of part of the whole MS4 program, and it's a very concise, brief ordinance that basically says, don't connect anything to our storm drain system that's not supposed to be connected there. Those are illicit connections. They go back decades. You keep finding them. They just keep popping up, and those are illegal, and so they need to be corrected. So we did take a look at that ordinance. We didn't make a lot of changes, really just some sort of housekeeping on that. It didn't require a lot of work. The flood hazard area, we did add some new policies to that. So when you do get a chance to look at that, we wanted to expand the geographic scope a bit, because what we were seeing in Cumberland and what we're seeing everywhere else is that the FEMA 100-year floodplains aren't really, that's often what communities use as their boundary for regulation, because it's a line on a map, and that's kind of what you're looking for. I need a line on the map to do this, and that's probably the best line we have right now, but it's not really getting the job done from a regulatory standpoint. The water's going beyond the 100-year floodplain more regularly than it used to. So we did add the 500-year floodplain to that. We were hoping to add some new modeling that the state is coming up with, but the timing is not going to work out for the project. It's not going to be ready for another couple of years. So this will come back to you in another couple of years when you get some really good lines on a map that are better than the FEMA 100 year and better than the FEMA 500 year. Right now, that's the best you have, and they're good. They're fine to work with. But we did expand some of the requirements out to the 500 year. It's worth noting that you don't have a lot of 500 year floodplain. You've got slopes down to rivers that are sort of like this. And so when you get up to your 100 year, you don't go that much further to get out to your 500 year. So we didn't absorb a lot of land area in that change, but there are some spots in the community that have experienced flooding that we are adding some sort of safety measures, elevate the building, and if you can't elevate the building, flood-proof the building, basically is how that goes. So those are some things that you'll see in that flood area ordinance. Soil erosion and sediment control, there is a specific ordinance that deals with disturbances of a certain level. I believe is it 40,000 or 10,000 square feet? One of those two. I believe.
Oh, 10,000.
10,000 square feet, yeah, 40,000 is the stormwater. So 10,000 square feet, if you disturb more than that, then the ordinance kicks in and there's a whole sort of set of requirements for that. But of course, you're seeing disturbances less than 10,000 square feet come across your desk, and so we had to address that issue as well. Basically, the ordinance that you had on the books was just old. You know, the model ordinance that the state puts out, which is good, has moved past that, has moved beyond that. So we updated a lot. A lot of that was like sort of housekeeping, bringing things up to date, identifying the best practices, cleaning up the plan requirements. It's an ordinance that just reads better now and accomplishes the same goal. So this stuff is sort of getting more into sort of your world right now, right? So you have the zoning and then the land development and subdivision regulations. In the zoning, we did look at parking, so you'll see some potential reforms in there. We didn't do a lot. You know, this is work that my company does a lot, and there wasn't much of an appetite for all the bells and whistles of the shared parking and all these different things and the calculations and the peak demand stuff. Like, it was more of like, look at what you can do with our ordinance and, you know, identify areas where you think you can reduce the minimum. And so we identified a few. We reduced the minimum on residential, on office. The world of office has changed a lot. General business, utilities. So there's about a half a dozen uses in there where we lowered the minimum a bit. And, you know, I think parking brings a lot of anxiety to folks, you know, regulators and developers. You know, we want to make sure we have enough, we want to make sure we have enough. And I think, you know, what we try to tell folks is that there are many forces at work that determine or that shape parking. Zoning is one of those. The other one, which I would argue is probably even more influential, is finance. And so folks who are financing development need to have a bank or other financial underwriters look at their plan and approve it. And if they're not happy with the amount of parking that's there, they're going to let the applicant know, we're not going to finance this. And that's sort of that's a showstopper. That's a deal breaker right there. And so that's sort of part of the decision making. So what I try to, you know, let my clients know on these issues, let local boards know is, we feel it's appropriate for your regulations, for your zoning ordinance, to just set the minimum and provide the opportunity to give less when they can without getting that variance, without having to jump up through all those hoops and those added hearings and all of those things. If they can get away based on the location, based on pre-existing conditions, based on access to parking, based on access to transit, if they can provide a viable residential development that has about 1.5 spaces per unit, they should have that opportunity, you know. And if the underwriters are happy with it, if they have the infrastructure there to support it, you know, they can add another couple of units. Parking is real estate. You know, you're adding spaces, you're taking up real estate. So we've identified a couple of those uses for your consideration, and we can talk about those in more detail. Another thing that's changed in there, and we talked with DPW and staff about this opportunity in Cumberland and all over New England, lots of older development, older, smaller parking lots, or even bigger parking lots that just got built with no drainage and no landscaping. They're out there, they're in this community. And so how do you incentivize or require improvements to those? And so Rhode Island state law, allows under nonconformity, one of the most confusing things in zoning ever, nonconformity, but it is allowed that you would say that this parking lot that has no landscaping, that has, very poor drainage on it, it's non-conforming. You have landscaping today. You have landscaping requirements and you have drainage requirements that those parking lots aren't meeting. So if you're gonna go in and you're gonna tear up, 2,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, if you're gonna tear up, we're gonna open a discussion under nonconformity that says we wanna see improvements. And it's kind of a negotiation at that point. So you use the legal mechanism to say, all right, you're going beyond top coat. So if someone's going to go in and blacktop or top coat, you don't get a say in that. They're just going to go ahead and do that. But if they're going to start ripping things up, and if they're going to have equipment out there, there's an opportunity to put in a tree. There's an opportunity to change the drainage path. There's an opportunity to do something to improve the conditions on that site, and you can have that conversation. So those are some of the highlights you'll see in parking. In land development and subdivision, drainage is kind of a big one that you'll obviously be very interested in. You administer this, and we made some what will look like, but aren't necessarily significant changes, and I'll explain what I mean by that. You're aware that the state has a stormwater manual, and the stormwater manual has 8 minimum requirements in there for things like recharge, flood protection, a lot of the things that you already address. And when you look at the calculations that you require, very consistent with the state. So a lot of those things already matched already. Some of it didn't. There are a couple of places where it didn't. We've added those. But so what we've done is we've made a stronger connection between your regulations and how the state stormwater manual works. We've made that a lot clearer. We've sort of set up those same minimum standards. So there's a lot of reorganization of material to fit into those minimum standard requirements. So you'll see that as you go through. But again, the flooding aspect, like the conveyance and the flooding and the runoff, almost identical to what the state already requires. So those things are pretty much in lockstep. Where there is significant difference, your current regulations really do not address water quality. So you encourage, for example, vegetated stormwater treatment. And so it's almost implied that if you use these practices, we favor these practices, we know the water is going to be cleaner. And that's kind of where Cumberland stops at this point. You say, use these as much as you can. I think the unwritten message is, we know this is better for the environment, so we'll get what we can out of it. And so we've added some much more detailed language about water quality, about pre-treatment. And remember that, if some of these applications, the bigger ones, already have to do this, already have to get this state level permit. What you're going to be capturing is some of the ones that are below that, below the 40,000 square feet of disturbance. And you're going to have an opportunity to apply these regulations. So the water quality piece would be like sort of a change in the way you do business right now. So you want to take a look at that. And then the other piece that's different that the state does, which I think is a good thing, is the so-called infill and redevelopment standard. So if you have a site that's in the middle of a main street like this, and it was built, constructed, 80 years ago, and they're going to tear it up and they're going to redo it, the question kind of becomes, okay, well, what do we do about the stormwater? Like, it was a mess before, but we probably can't reasonably require them to treat it like a perfect site, like an undeveloped site. They've got constraints. They've got legitimate constraints. And so, the state has good language on how to deal with that. You're basically like treating 40% of the impervious cover is sort of the minimum. And as the engineers can figure it out, like they can work with the site and find those opportunities to make that happen. You're just sort of setting the bar and saying, okay, you just need to show us that you're capturing, you're treating 40% of the stormwater runoff here, you're meeting the flood standards, and then we can move forward. So it's a sort of like give and take, if you will, in those situations. So those are two things that you'll want to look at with drainage. I just kind of talked through all this stuff. Let's talk about landscaping. So one of the themes here is that much of what Cumberland has today was retained. So you see that with drainage, you saw that with erosion and sediment control. We did a lot of reorganization, we did a lot of reformatting. We were finding a standard over here, and a standard over there, and a plan requirement over here, and a plan requirement over there, and so we sort of like pulled all that out and put it back together in a way that your general principles are all here. Your standards, your performance standards are all here. Your plan requirements are all there. So at a glance, you'll see some of this stuff and you're like, oh my God, they deleted everything. It's like, no, we moved everything. We sort of reshuffled the deck so that all the different suits of the cards are together, sort of put it all back together. A lot of the existing requirements, same as drainage, a lot of your existing requirements were clarified or strengthened. You have a lot in there already on landscaping. Some technical issues were updated. I'll cover a couple of those. And we did add a lot of diagrams to this particular section. So you'll see that when you do go through this buffers, for example, like sideline buffers, setback buffers, put a lot of diagrams in there. It's like, what would a good 12-foot buffer look like? How would that be planted? How would the fence line up? If you put a drainage swale in there, what would that look like? If you put a sidewalk in there, what would that look like? So just some ways to help both the applicant and you look at these applications and make good choices. Notable changes. So some of the individual standards changed, and you'll see that. So for example, when you're selecting vegetation, any good landscape architect knows that we all live in a certain climate zone, like there's a number associated with it. And since the last time Cumberland, since your existing regulations, your climate zone has changed. It's a different one now. So you're up to 6B at this point. And it's probably going to change again. And so there's some language in there to accommodate for that as things continue to get warmer. And you want to select plants that are going to thrive in that environment. It's that simple. You have a very blunt standard right now for trees that basically says all new trees have to be 3.5-inch caliper. Like if you're going to put in a new tree, it's got to be at least that wide when you put it in. That sounds good at a glance, but if you talk to a landscape architect, one of the things you realize really quickly is that the right caliper has to match the species. So if they select a really nice tree for a particular spot and you say 3.5 inches, they're going to go to every nursery within 200 miles and they're not going to find one because they're all 2 inches, because that's the right size for that tree. So there's a reference in there that basically says, American nursery standards, pick the right caliper according to this reference. Simple kind of tweak there. Parking islands, another thing, your current parking islands are minimum 5 feet wide. That's just not enough if you're going to landscape it. That landscaping is going to die. It's too hot, salt, the cars backing in and out and over and all of that stuff. You need 10 feet of space in those landscape islands. So that's an example of something that we've changed and that we can talk about. So there's a few of those sort of individual best practices that you'll see in there. Similar to drainage, We just sort of clarified, made a stronger connection to the stormwater manual. The stormwater manual talks about how to use landscaping to help with drainage. It's really one of the best tools that you have in the toolbox. So selecting the right plants, designing your landscaped areas correctly, just adds amazing value. It not only looks nice, but it's providing sort of a utility style benefit to go with it. And then a new section that's in there is on planting and cultivation. And, just to be totally honest on this, I talked with a lot of boards, and they start reading through planting and cultivation, and the ones who are honest with me will say, are you kidding me? Are we really telling people like how to plant things in the ground? And the answer is yes, we are, because in these environments, I mean, how many times do you walk down the street and you see a row of newly planted trees, and the next year they're all dead? They weren't planted right. They weren't selected right, they weren't planted right. So there are standards in here for how this is going to happen. And one of the things we want to hear a little bit from you tonight is like the next question, if people say, okay, well, I see the value in that, and they say, well, how do I enforce that? Like, what am I going to do in terms of like getting out on the site? And so there are mechanisms for that as well, and some of the plan requirements provide guarantees, so we can talk through that a little bit. Another new and small but important section, to the extent that we do still have snow, you want to show where it's going. Like right now, your plans don't call for that. So it's important for you to know, it's important for the applicant to think like, okay, if I do get a foot of snow in this giant parking lot, where's it all going to go? And what's that going to do to my landscaping and everything else that's happening out there? Site protection. So remember we talked about the erosion and sediment control ordinance that covers things for 10,000 square feet or more. If you're looking at an application that's going to disturb 8,000 square feet, you need something to hang your hat on. And so we've added some language in there about sort of basic site protection. Again, you already have some of this in there. You'll remember that nice little picture you have of the tree and the truck and the protection lines on the drip line, that sort of thing, like how to protect the landscaping you're going to keep, how to clean up the site afterwards, all of those things. As a result of this, your landscaping plan has become more detailed. There's more to it. I don't have to tell you this, but for the folks at home, if you have a standard, your application has to give you the information you need to determine whether there's compliance with that standard. So I think that's kind of a weakness that you have today in some of your, and I don't know how you're experiencing that, but you have some pretty good standards, for example, for landscaping, and some pretty good standards for drainage and other things. And then I look at your checklists and I wonder, are they getting the information on these applications that they need to say yes or no? Like you're sort of meeting that standard. So the only way to do that is with a little bit of a longer checklist. And so you'll see that in there. That's a really quick overview of a lot of material. I guess I'm open to any questions that you have. I've got the documents on my laptop. I can sort of flip through their particular areas, but one of the things that I do want to make sure I hear about is if any of this causes discomfort from a capacity standpoint, like if you, and we can talk about this at the next meeting as well, when you've had a chance to really dig into this stuff. We want to make sure we don't put anything on the books that you don't have the expertise, access to the expertise. You're worried about the quality of the applications. Like, are you going to have what you need? Are we asking for too much? We do a lot of this. We try to be like, we want to achieve really good development, but we don't want to be too onerous, on the applicant side. So we really try to strike that balance. And we don't want to overburden the boards. We don't want to give the boards so much information that, like, I can't even get through this application, right? So it's kind of, that's operational feedback that we want to get from you. So I'll stop there.
I just had a and maybe this is for Glenn, about the parking. So I think the town ordinance now is 2 spaces per unit, but then I thought the state, in part of their housing legislation, said no, just 1 spot per unit. Is the 1 spot per unit just for the comprehensive permits? So that's just for the affordable?
That's right.
So we would be saying 1.5 spaces per unit throughout the town, unless it was a.
It's one.
Yeah, I think was it 1.5 or 1? I
It's
forgot.
one in the current proposal.
It's a minimum of 1.
Minimum of 1 per unit.
Right. But it
No
wouldn't-
matter how many bedrooms.
But it wouldn't stop someone from, 1.5,
Sure.
1.8,
Yeah, no, I think bringing the parking minimums down makes sense, given the number of people who work from home now and the ride share services, and there's just, people have a lot more mobility options, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, I was telling folks in a previous conversation, my office, I think we have 16 people assigned to my office, and we can probably only fit 8 or 9. And it's never an issue because people work from home, or people are remote or whatever it is. We have empty chairs.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question regarding flood maps.
Yes, sir.
FEMA issues flood maps, I assume. Does the state also issue flood maps?
No, the FEMA is the official flood map. Of course, that ties into insurance. That's really sort of
Right.
the other like big angle on all of that. But I alluded to some, so you're not a coastal community, obviously, but there is modeling on all of Rhode Island's coastal communities through this Storm Tools model application that was developed a while ago, and it's been updated as well. That type of modeling is going to be performed for all of the inland communities. So, for example, the Blackstone will have much more sophisticated modeling that will show better flood lines than what FEMA has. I don't know how FEMA's I think FEMA will keep its lines for insurance. I don't see that changing soon if I try to crystal ball. But other states, for example, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, they are all starting to rely on other tools, other models for performance standards, regulation, those types of things, because the data are just better.
So if a community wanted to promulgate stricter standards, to use a phrase, than FEMA has, it could do that.
Yes.
And lastly, how often does FEMA update maps? Is it ad hoc, or is there something in federal legislation?
I don't think I can give you a good answer to that. It's not in response to legislation, is my understanding. There was a recent, when was the last one, Glenn? It was pretty recent. They just did a revision. No, it was within the last, I'm gonna guess, here I am on public television, I'm gonna say, I think it was about 6 years ago that they did a refresher on a lot of their line work. But it is still, the experts and FEMA will very quickly agree that it's not super precise.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question about parking.
Yes, sir.
Spaces. Is there a minimum requirement for the width of a parking space? Because lots of times, you go by different places, different stores and et cetera, they have good-sized parking spaces, pretty wide. And then there are those who have businesses that they want to get as many people as they can into their
I just
parking lot.
squeezed it out here, it was pretty tight.
Yeah.
So there's, the only legal width requirements that I'm aware of have to do with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
The handicap.
Yes, so that, there are like standards you need to meet, and they got the van, there's different things going on there. The debate that I often see is, should it be 9 or should it be 10, right? And so that's kind of what you're dealing with. And that, of course, is for perpendicular parking. So the width of it's all a system. So you start talking with the engineers, As the travel lane shrinks, the parking space has to widen because you had to cut that turn earlier, right? You can't get way the heck out there and then make that cut. So there's a relationship between the parking space width and then the travel lane. The other thing is, you're gonna go to Stop and Shop, or you're gonna go to one of these places, and you see they've got, it's not a single white line between the spaces, it's the double white line, right? Because they want that carriage, to sort of be able to go through. So there's different things happening when you really geek out about this and you look at it. The short answer is it's 9 or 10 feet for the minimum. 9 is adequate, but you may have a few more scrapes over time, but yeah.
Yeah, I've had experienced situations now, especially we want to talk about supermarkets, okay? There are more and more people, not SUVs, but with their own personal pickup trucks. And they try to squeeze into a spot and they can't. And I know my car got dinged a couple of times, pretty good. And we knew it was let's talk about not the little ones, not the small Hondas and stuff, but the big GMC things, and they come barreling in, and they are definitely going to ding somebody. And again, because they're that big, and you talk about the travel lane, they've got that problem of backing out.
Right.
And because they are, many cases now with the passenger or crew cabs that they have now, that truck's even longer. And I know that my brother-in-law, he built his garage, put had 9-foot wide doors, and he had trouble, so he made 10. So I'm in the process of building a garage, and mine's definitely gonna be 10 feet wide no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, coming up with a standard, my preference would be a minimum of 10 feet. But there are times when, especially on a smaller development, they're kind of confined with space, so they'll cheat and put in 9 foot wide, and it's just not wide enough.
Now, there are trade-offs to certainly consider. You actually reminded me of an issue that I didn't bring up that I want to bring up on the parking. Is the other thing that you'll see that we often get pushback on, that I want to make sure you're aware of, is loading. I professionally think that there is a disconnect between the reality of loading and the loading that you see in the regulations. Like the loading in the regulations, and Cumberland and many others, is really appropriate to like a big shopping plaza where trucks are coming in the back and there's dedicated loading space and all of this stuff. Small businesses, main streets, corridors, all those things, stuff that was built decades ago, there is no space for loading, and it's okay. You can get stuck in the morning, in the commutes, you gotta wait, a few minutes, but the reality is that businesses have been dealing without having loading successfully for decades, and most of us don't even know it. They do use their parking lots. They do drop things off at 6 a.m. in the morning. They do specify with their vendors, you can't bring that big truck back here, I want a smaller truck, and the vendor will do it. Like, this is sort of the reality of how that works. So we think that there's a great opportunity to sort of relax those requirements, and you'll see that language in there, that you really don't need to have strict, dedicated, big, prominent loading space for all of your businesses.
I was also glad to see the kind of the attention that was paid to the landscaping regulations. It sometimes feels, not so much lately, it's that Glenn spends a lot of time on, Mr. Stevens spends a lot of time on. But it always seems like it's the last thing we talk about is, oh yeah, by the way, the landscaping. And it's becoming increasingly important. And I remember when we did the 3-inch caliper, and it was because developers, would put trees on the plan, and then they put these Charlie Brown trees. And Mr. Stevens would come to us and say, they planted this little, stick in the ground, and it's gonna take 30 years before it's a, full-grown tree. We need to have some standard, but I agree there needs to be some nuance of,
Right.
If you're gonna have some kind of, fruit tree, something like that, that's not gonna grow, have that big of a trunk, but it would look nice and work with the
there may
overall
be-
landscaping plan,
You may want a
it
4-inch
makes sense, but.
for a bigger tree, or
Yeah.
2-inch for a smaller, it's.
But I think having a more robust checklist, giving people kind of examples and pictures of this is what we're looking for, it'll also help us, hold us accountable as we're looking at plans. Because as we talked about with the proposal on Mendon Road, there's just not a lot of green left on Mendon Road. And so anytime we can promote putting more of that, I think it's important, and having the regulations that back that up and giving people specific examples of what we're looking for, I think that's really helpful. So.
Well, I can appreciate the caliper situation. A 60-year-old sequoia is about like this, and it's maybe 6 to 8 feet tall.
Right.
And I was in California, and they had these little signs up, and you look at these sequoias, and, and they're way up there, and you can't see the tops. And then they got this one over here. It's 60 years old. So I can appreciate that, depending on, the area, there are certain trees that are conducive to the climate, for one thing. And you don't want to put something there that's, not going to make it. But on the other side of it, as far as planting, if you have a contractor plant trees and not a landscaper plant trees, it's going to be a different situation. They're going to plop that tree in there, and they're not going to plant it as what a landscaper would do. And you talk about proper planting.
And they don't think about the salt and the sand and all
Yeah.
the discharge from the roads. It just kills the trees after a year or two.
Yeah. Arborvitaes, they put arborvitaes in for screening, and they're right on the backside of what would be the sidewalk. Yeah, a couple years later, and they're all brown. Why? Because the salt's just. Yeah. Right. I don't know what you would use that doesn't eventually die from salt, but that's.
I think there's some flexibility built in there, you want a good landscape architect to be able to make those decisions.
Well, we rely on one, he's not here tonight, but one of our planning board members is a landscape architect.
Yeah.
And so we're always asking him questions.
Right.
And then, of course, he will, from time to time, ask questions himself because of his area of expertise.
Yeah, no, I'm always asking we have landscape architects at our firm, I'm always asking them, well, what do I put in the regulations here? What I put, and the answer is often, don't specify it, have them submit their choice and justify it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't put them in a box, give them the room to use their expertise and then explain to you why they did what they did.
Anything else that comes to mind? I mean, there's a lot to absorb. I went through this morning, and it's like, okay, how much of this am I going to retain for tonight?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm stating the obvious, like prioritize land development, go down to parking, and then I would say probably go to flood. There's a lot of intertwine there, erosion, sediment control. The illicit discharge one, you can read that before you go to bed, but,
I really don't know of anything. I mean, I know Providence, I know probably Woonsocket, they have combined sewers.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about, basically.
Yeah,
Or
but
somebody tying a sewer into.
people find old laundry discharges and roof drains is a common one. They find that stuff, and never know. You can't tell when it went in.
Right.
What's the time frame for this document?
I think that's up for discussion, right, Glenn? I mean, we feel like this is a very good first draft, but it's, you have to be comfortable with it. So I think it's a question of when that will be.
I mean, I think if you want more time to digest it, you got a lot of, and you got these state statutes, there's a lot of dry stuff in your packet, so.
Is this the entire document draft?
Yeah, minus the definitions, the housekeeping, and the checklists. Remember, I mentioned
at
that.
the
So
beginning.
this is really 90%, 95% of what is going to go through.
Okay.
There's just some supporting stuff that isn't there yet.
Okay, I was just curious.
And our town engineer has he been involved at this point?
Yes.
Or-
I mean, Glenn-
Yeah, public,
Yeah,
Romeo, and yes, they have.
Yeah.
They've been looking through this.
because as far as the drainage is concerned, and, drainage methodology and so on.
That's what they're looking for, yeah.
Yeah,
They would be the ones
yeah.
signing off on that.
I understand it, but because that's what I used to do. It's important that we've got somebody that is doing that.
So do you want to, I don't know, maybe at the next meeting, check in on this with them?
I'll follow up with you if you want, maybe next month, just whatever you couldn't get to this month. We'll put it on the agenda again, just to see where you're at and where you're comfortable.
Yeah, and if, I don't know what, I don't have my calendar, but if I can be here, I will. I'm happy to come, and answer questions.
We're somewhat flexible. We try to limit our special meetings, though. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm gonna hit the head.
Be gentle. Mr. Modica, Director's Report.
So, one project I wanted to give you an update to the board. It's for the Berkeley Mill at 30 Martin Street. It's a project that fell under administrative development plan review. There was not a trigger for it to come to the planning board. So that project was, the applicant wants to put in, there's a vacant industrial space in the building, and he wants to put in 24 one-bedroom apartments. And I don't know if you're familiar, I think it was in 2018, the Berkeley Mill mixed-use overlay district was enacted. And so that allows up to 75 one-bedroom apartments. So this is kind of the first phase of maybe 2 more. In terms of parking, we've been talking about parking in court, within the overlay district. The applicant only has to provide half as many parking spaces as we require in the ordinance. So instead of 2 per unit, he only has to provide 1. And it also requires that a covenant be recorded, which has been recorded, that acknowledges the industrial character of that area and that those industrial uses don't constitute a nuisance. So we were basically looking at the parking. We did a count of everything. We found out, all the businesses that were there, how many spaces should they have, you get divided by half and all that, and they're fine with where they are right now. So we reviewed it with the technical review committee on June 17th. We didn't see any issues, and the planning department approved it administratively on July 1st.
That was going to be my question, was that if are there additional parking spaces needed, or do they already have them there?
I've been by there a couple times. It depends on the time of the day. I've never seen it full.
Yeah.
But according to the ordinance, they're in good shape, and there always seem to be empty spaces there.
Way back when, with Mr. Stevens, we did take a tour of that building.
Yeah.
And it was quite impressive what they had done up to this point.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you've been there since the solar panels went in. They actually look kind of cool. questions for me on that one? So as they come up, that was the first one, since this new legislation where the planning department just had to do it, so, and as more come up, you know, we'll let you know. Next agenda item?
Yeah.
All right.
Got the update on the new land use legislation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna get into the weeds in this.
Yeah.
You know, it just was signed by the governor, like the end of June. So there's a lot to digest. There's some bills that went into effect that are in effect right now, and there's others that go into effect of the 1st of next year. And, you know, as we keep figuring this out. So in terms of, nothing seemed to me like what's been going on in other years, relatively benign. But they changed the definition for a minor subdivision. It used to be, and minor subdivisions just go to the planning department. They don't go here. It used to be 9 or fewer. And now they added, it's confusing how they did it. They said 9 or fewer or 10 or more without a street creation. In effect, it's an infinite number of lots if you're not creating a street. That's a minor subdivision.
Could you say that again?
It's confusing.
Say that again, please.
It's, well, where is it? Page 11. That's how it was also, I'm on the wrong one.
Creating a street,
No.
any number of lots could just be approved by the planning department without coming to the planning board.
If there's no,
If you're not creating a new.
No, it's just the Berkeley thing.
so, I mean, you could have, you know, 50-acre parcel, and I guess you got to figure out it's a public street. So if you have a condominium, private, 50 units, let's say, there's no public street, I don't think there would be a planning board review. But, you know, we're still testing the waters here. I don't know. No, it doesn't sound good.
I mean, what was their thinking is what I'd ask.
Right, and these things, you know, they change one thing one year, then they change what they change, and change it back, and
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, you know, I get the idea of what the legislature trying to simplify things. I mean, just a personal observation, if the further you get away from, or the more that development is allowed without coming before the board, and I don't say that because I'm a member of the board, but just as a citizen, the more tenuous this all gets. You know, public doesn't get to comment. So I guess I'll just make an observation that if someone were going to develop a 50-unit condominium and you had the authority to do it in-house, I'd prefer that you voluntarily come before the board and allow, and if you're telling me that state law would preclude that, that's unfortunate. I'm just speaking hypothetically.
we'll have to see how this works out. I mean, I can't force someone to come here. I can present it on my own, but I can't make an applicant come here.
The only thing that I would think could happen, okay, is if there was something that you could straight out approve, and you think you need planning board advice, you know?
Right, okay, so it's, right, it's not straight up that I approve it. I can, if I can't make the findings of fact, if I can't do that, then it would come to the planning board.
There is before the meeting, I was looking at the briefs, there is a letter from he's a state senator in North Providence, and he voted against the housing legislation. And he said the primary reason was it's almost impossible to come up with these laws that you can uniformly put on every city and town. So what you're talking about may not be so much of an issue in Cumberland because what's left to develop, or you're not gonna have to put in a public road. I mean, there isn't any place with, you know, acres of frontage anymore. But in a place like Charlestown, Richmond, you know, some of these more rural areas of the state, you do have these huge wooded areas where now you could put a 50-unit subdivision and never come to a planning board or
With tons of
anything like
frontage,
that. So
right.
it's a very
But it would need.
slippery slope to say, as a state, we're just gonna, keep widening these rules without
If you
cities
read,
and towns having.
But if it needed roads, then it would have to come to us.
if it needed a public
Yeah.
road, right?
But if you had tons of frontage, I mean, you just had 2 miles
Yeah.
front end, you could just boop, 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 boop.
Well, say like North Shore Mill,
So,
okay, which, there is a comprehensive permitting process there. Let's say that was a straight out, that's what I envisioned by it.
Yeah, Mr. Butler, I totally agree there. And one thing I've noticed in the recent changes too, because in my job, I primarily deal with reviewing municipal comprehensive plans, is that they're taking advantage of the fact that a lot of those more rural communities haven't updated their plans or don't have a state-approved plan. So they've been tweaking some of the language, like one of the changes in here is consistency with the comp plan is no longer a required finding.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
Instead, the planning board must evaluate consistency solely based on the affordable housing plan, which is essentially the housing element of your comp plan. So if you have plans that are out of date now, so last year, one of the changes that preceded this year's legislation was you needed to have that, that 10-year approval from my office, the Division of Statewide Planning. And if that expired, you could no longer use comprehensive plan consistency to deny an application. So you're seeing that more. They're playing that game with the language of, essentially, once you don't have that and it's no longer relevant, you can't use that to deny an application.
Like, you almost need a live document, that literally.
You really do, and we're seeing more amendments to
Yeah.
comp plans
You can't.
because of
You
these
can't do 10
requirements.
10 years out, because of all the changes that are happening.
20.
Oh, it's 20, sorry.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, it came up tonight, was the permits changing again, going back to final plan. So I think that adds to the confusion. You're under one regime 1 year, and now we're back to permits aren't required to final plan. So it's confusing to keep up with these things.
It gets us into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, now here we are, it's July, and now we're back to final plan again. So from now on, at least until it changes next year, it's final plan, so.
And that's why we have a solicitor and Mr. Monica.
Keep up. I'll just go real quick. There's a new thing about oversized lots. Like, there are some towns that will create lots that don't meet minimum lot size. We never do, but now we have to. Based on, there's a formula, you look at the abutters, you measure all the surrounding lots within 200 feet, and if the lot they want to create, is as big or bigger than 50%, they get to create a smaller lot. So like if you had minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, and their lot is 15,000 square feet, they would need 20,000 to subdivide it. Now that might not be the case. All in the name, to create more housing. And that kind of leads to these weird things, which is more related to zoning, about substandard lots of record, where we had talked about there's the proportionality. If you remember, smaller lots get their setbacks reduced proportionally. There's another thing that the zoning officer is going to have to do, dealing with neighborhood character-based modifications, which allows for more relief if your lot doesn't meet frontage requirements. One good thing, I don't know if you had any questions about land development subdivision, so I was going to move on to low moderate income housing comp permits. I just had a couple quick things on that. So one good thing is that for comp permits, the state took away the master plan 2 years ago, and now it's back. So we may have, that's why we've been doing all these pre-application meetings, is that was a substitute for master plan. So we may probably gonna see less pre-applications and more master plans. So that's better, I think, for the applicants and for the board too.
Well, usually the master plan is a little bit further along than a pre-app, because that pre-app that came in for the last one,
Yeah,
it was kind of, could have had more information.
it's very limited to what
Yeah.
they need to, what an applicant needs to provide.
Yep.
Is very limited.
Yeah.
And we're gonna see how that plays out.
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot of information. Your timeline to review these comp permit applications went from 90 days to 60 days from when the planning department certifies something complete. So that, depending on when it's certified complete, when you meet, there's a chance you might only have one meeting to vote on it. So
It's like, hurry up, hurry up.
something to keep an eye on, and like Mr. O'Neill said, you don't need to look at your comp plan anymore for affordable housing projects. So don't worry about it.
The other thing I saw was that now affordable units can be 75% of the size of a market rate unit.
Right.
Which, as I was saying to Mr. Partington, I mean, it's something that seems to make sense, in that if you make the unit a little bit smaller, it might be a little bit cheaper to build, maybe. But I thought the whole concept was, we didn't want the people in affordable units to kind of be
Right. That's why they gave the density.
labeled as the
Right.
affordable unit, because all the units look the same, so you can't really tell which one's affordable, which one's market rate.
We had a situation at one point that you could tell right off the bat, this unit had a garage, this one didn't. And you could tell, I mean, the idea was to make them, so you couldn't tell one from the other.
Right. They gave them the density bonus, now they get a little, now they get more. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I ask a question, Chairman, just because I think I missed something? Item 6, was that continued, or did
That's the sidewalks.
the sidewalk waiver?
That's a tortured project, it's just, and I made a mistake for advertising it, so it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda,
It was
okay.
taken off.
Okay.
It'll come, I know you want to see it.
It's not that I want to see it, it's like the
like,
zombie
well, what's going
agenda
on?
item. It's always there, but it never shows itself.
Yeah, that's been around for so long.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
You need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
by
adjourn.
Mr. O'Neill, second by the entire board. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. No ladies here.
Thank you, Chairman.